He was barely breathing when they rushed him in, his terrified daughter clinging to his arm. Dr. Emily fought to keep him alive, until her eyes caught the bracelet on his wrist. It was the same one her mother died protecting, and it should not exist anymore. The emergency room buzzed with urgency. Nurses called out vitals, machines beeped, and the air was thick with tension. Emily's hands moved instinctively, performing the life-saving procedures she had practiced countless times. Yet her mind was not entirely in the moment. That bracelet, its dull silver, the tiny engraving worn down with age, pulled her back to a night she had tried for years to forget. The man's name, according to his chart, was Daniel Hart, 32 years old, no known allergies, no medical history on file. Beside his bed, a little girl no older than 6 gripped the railing and whispered, "Please do not let my daddy die." Her voice trembled, but her eyes held a strange mix of fear and determination. Emily's heart clenched. She had seen countless patients and heard countless pleas, but something about this child's desperation felt different, personal. She bent down, looked the girl in the eyes, and said gently, "I promise I will do everything I can." The girl nodded slowly, clutching a small stuffed bear so tightly it seemed strained. The resuscitation was grueling. His breathing was shallow, his pulse weak, and every second felt like an eternity. As Emily worked, her gaze kept flicking toward that bracelet. She knew every detail, the delicate chain links, the oval charm with faded initials. She had held it in her hand as a child, before tragedy struck. Finally, Daniel stabilized. His chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm, the worst moment seemingly over. The nurses exchanged relieved glances, and the girl exhaled a shaky breath. But for Emily, relief was replaced by a deep, gnawing curiosity and a rising dread. How did this man come to possess something that should have been buried with her mother? Before she could ask, the girl whispered something barely audible. Emily leaned closer. "What did you say, sweetheart?" The child glanced nervously toward her father, then back to Emily. "Daddy said we are not supposed to tell anyone about the bracelet." Emily froze, her mind racing. Why would a man she had never met instruct his daughter to hide the existence of something so seemingly innocent? Unless it was not innocent at all. She straightened slowly, her professional mask slipping just enough for the girl to see her confusion. "Can you tell me where your daddy got it?" The child bit her lip. "He said it is from someone very special, someone who saved him once." Emily's pulse quickened. Saved him. Her mother had saved lives. Her mother died saving someone. Could Daniel have been there that night? Or was this all some terrible coincidence? She knew one thing for certain. She had to find out before Daniel woke up. Daniel's eyelids fluttered, a faint groan escaping his lips as the sedative wore off. Emily stood at his bedside, clipboard in hand, though she barely glanced at the notes. Her eyes were fixed on the bracelet glinting faintly under the fluorescent light. The little girl perked up. "Daddy, you are awake!" She scrambled onto the edge of the bed, hugging him carefully so not to disturb the IV lines. Daniel managed a weak smile and placed a trembling hand on her head. Emily cleared her throat. "Mr. Hart, I'm Dr. Emily Carter. You collapsed earlier. We were able to stabilize you, but I will need to run more tests to find the cause." His gaze shifted from her face to her name tag, then back again. Something unreadable passed through his eyes. Was it recognition? She could not tell. I remember feeling dizzy. Next thing I knew, I was here." His voice was hoarse, as though every word cost him strength. Emily hesitated, then forced her voice into a calm, professional tone. "That bracelet you're wearing? May I ask where you got it?" For the briefest moment, Daniel's expression tightened. His hand instinctively moved to cover the bracelet, as if shielding it from view. "It was a gift," he said shortly. "From whom?" she pressed, unable to hide her curiosity. His jaw flexed. "Someone I owe my life to." Emily's stomach twisted. That was almost exactly what his daughter had said. "May I see it more closely?" Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because—" She hesitated, her voice lowering. "I think I have seen it before." Silence fell between them. The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only sound in the room. Daniel finally said, "You could not have. This bracelet, it is one of a kind." Emily swallowed hard. "That's what I thought too." The little girl glanced between them, sensing the tension. "Daddy, is this about her?" His head snapped toward his daughter. "Shh." His voice was gentle but firm, and the girl shrank back against the pillow. Emily leaned forward, her pulse pounding in her ears. "Her who?" Daniel looked away. "It doesn't matter." Emily could feel her patience fraying. "It matters to me, because my mother had an identical bracelet. She died protecting the person she gave it to." Her voice caught slightly, but she did not back down. His eyes returned to hers, this time filled with something heavy. Guilt, sorrow, and maybe even fear. "Then, I think you deserve to know the truth, but not here." Emily frowned. "Why not?" Daniel glanced toward the door, then at his daughter. "Because if certain people find out I spoke to you about it, we'll both be in danger." Her heart lurched. Danger? What could possibly be so dangerous about an old bracelet? Before she could respond, a knock on the door interrupted them. A tall man in a dark suit stepped in, his expression unreadable. He looked directly at Daniel. "It is time." Daniel's face drained of color. "Emily, whatever you do, keep my daughter safe." The man in the suit motioned for Daniel to follow. Nurses protested, insisting he wasn't well enough to leave, but the stranger's cold authority silenced them. Emily stood frozen, watching as Daniel was wheeled out of the room, his hand clutching the bracelet, as if it held his only hope. Emily stood frozen in the empty hospital room. The air felt heavier now, as if Daniel's absence had drained all the warmth from it. Sophie sat on the bed, hugging her stuffed bear so tightly that its head was squashed against her chest. Her little feet dangled off the edge, not quite touching the floor. "Where did they take my daddy?" Sophie's voice cracked, the words small and scared. Emily knelt beside her. "I do not know yet, sweetheart, but I promise you, I am going to find him." Sophie blinked up at her with tear-filled eyes. Then, almost as if remembering something important, she fumbled inside the bear's tiny vest and pulled out a folded scrap of paper. "Daddy said if he could not come back, to give you this." Emily took it carefully, her fingers trembling. She unfolded the paper and froze. It was a photograph. Her mother, alive, younger, standing in a sunny garden, smiling warmly. On her wrist was that same bracelet, and clutched in her mother's hand was the tiny hand of a boy, Daniel. Emily's knees weakened. The boy looked exactly like Daniel's daughter, Sophie. The resemblance was unmistakable. On the back of the photo, in faint, hurried handwriting, were two chilling words. Project Haven. Emily's mind spun. Why would Daniel have this, and why give it to her now? She needed answers. She left Sophie with a trusted nurse and headed to the hospital security room. "I need the footage from patient Hart's room right now," she demanded. The guard hesitated, but finally pulled up the recording. Grainy black and white footage showed Daniel lying in bed, until the man in the dark suit entered. No hesitation, no paperwork, just quiet authority. He flashed a badge too quickly to read, and the staff stepped aside without question. But just as they reached the elevator, the feed cut out. Emily stared at the guard. "What happened?" He looked uneasy. "That is not a glitch. Someone deleted it." She left the security office with a pounding heart. This was no random incident. Someone powerful wanted Daniel gone, and whatever that bracelet meant, buried with him. When she returned for Sophie, the nurse's face was pale. "Dr. Carter, men in suits were here asking for you. I told them you were not on the floor." Sophie gripped Emily's hand hard. "They said Daddy will not come home unless you stop asking questions." That night, Emily sat alone in her apartment, staring at the photograph under the dim glow of her desk lamp. Her mother's smile suddenly seemed sad. She typed Project Haven into her laptop. Buried deep in the archives, she found a decades-old article, "Government Whistleblower Missing After Leaking Secret Medical Project." The blurry photo beside it showed her mother, standing next to the same young Daniel from the picture. Emily's stomach turned cold. Daniel was too young in that photo for the years to match. Unless... A sudden knock at her door made her jump. She checked the peephole, and her blood ran cold. It was the man from the hospital. In his gloved hand, he held the bracelet. "Dr. Carter," he said evenly, "it is time you knew the truth." Emily slowly opened the door, her eyes locked on the man's gloved hand clutching the bracelet. He stepped inside without waiting for permission, his presence filling the small apartment like a shadow. "Who are you?" she demanded. "I am the person who has been cleaning up the mess left behind by Project Haven. And you, Dr. Carter, have just stumbled into the middle of it." Emily's pulse thundered. "Then tell me why a patient of mine, Daniel Hart, has my mother's bracelet. Tell me why you took him from my hospital." The man set the bracelet on her table. "Because Daniel is not who you think he is, and neither was your mother." Emily's breath caught. 22 years ago, Project Haven was a classified government program. Its goal was to create a medical serum capable of repairing organ damage and dramatically slowing the aging process. Your mother was one of the lead surgeons. She was brilliant, but she discovered the serum was unstable and deadly in the wrong hands. So she destroyed her research and disappeared. Emily shook her head. "That does not explain Daniel." The man's gaze hardened. "Daniel was one of the first recipients of the serum. He should have died as a teenager from a heart defect. Instead, your mother saved him with her own prototype, but the serum froze his aging for decades." Emily staggered back. "You are telling me Daniel is the same boy in this photograph? That is impossible." "It is not," the man said quietly. "Your mother gave him this bracelet as a promise that she would protect him. But when she was killed, Daniel went into hiding. The people who ran Project Haven have been hunting him ever since." Emily's chest tightened. "Then why bring him to my hospital?" The man's voice softened. "Because he was dying again. The serum's effects are wearing off. He knew only you could save him because you are your mother's daughter." Emily's mind spun, the truth sinking in like icy water. All her life she had wondered why her mother's death felt more than a random tragedy. Now she knew. She had died protecting a secret that still lived in front of her. "And Sophie?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "She is his real daughter. She has not inherited the serum's effects. But the people after Daniel will use her to get to him. That is why he told you to protect her." Emily looked down at the bracelet on the table, her reflection in its silver surface. Her mother's sacrifice had come full circle. Now it was her turn to protect the life her mother once saved. "When can I see him?" she asked. The man studied her a long moment. "If you walk through that door, there is no going back. You will be taking on enemies you can't see. You will be risking your career and your life." Emily picked up the bracelet and slid it onto her wrist. "Then I guess I'm already in." The man gave the faintest nod and stepped aside. Outside, a black SUV idled at the curb, its engine humming softly in the night. Sophie's small voice came from behind her. "Are we going to save Daddy now?" Emily squeezed her hand. "Yes, sweetheart, and this time, no one will take him away." As they stepped into the darkness, Emily knew her mother's story was not over. It was only just beginning.